Thank you for the introduction, Eliza. And thank you everyone for joining us today and for this last presentation. As Eliza said, my name is Bethany, and I'll be presenting on my placement here at the Trinity County Resource Conservation District in the Forest Health Department. So a quick introduction to Trinity County. It's a place in California that I think a lot of people have not heard of. We're located in far northwestern California. So the largest cities nearby are Redding, about an hour to the east, and Arcata, 2 hours to the west. So really remote, really forested, and a population of 16,112 as of the 2020 census, spread over this huge land area. So extremely rural county. The largest community is Weaverville, which is where our RCD is based. And approximately 75% of this county is public land, mostly federally managed land, which is a very high number. And that means that our work as an RCD is pretty different than a lot of resource conservation districts around the state. A lot of RCDs work primarily with private landowners, it might not even be involved with federal land managers. But here we have these Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management offices managing vast amounts of land with relatively small numbers of staff and funding. So a big part of our work is also bolstering their capacity. And this is also a county that's really intensely impacted by wildfire because it is primarily forested and super rural. So this fire history map on this slide gives you some idea. That giant large area down in the bottom of the map, the red, is the August complex, a million acre fire in 2020. And this map actually is missing huge fires in 2021. The small purple areas that you see grew into several really big fires in the Hayfork area and north of that, and then up near Coffee Creek. So it's a place that has been hit over and over by some really intense fire seasons, and that dictates how the community functions and a lot of our work. So within Trinity County RCD, we have a number of departments working on everything from GIS services to watershed health to education. But my focus was mostly in our Forest Health Department. I'd say we have kind of two primary goals that work together. One is just improving the overall health and resilience of our forests in this county. And one is reducing impact of catastrophic wildfire. So that's specifically a lot of work around communities, protecting infrastructure, et cetera. As is familiar from pretty much anywhere you live in California, this area has been impacted by a history of Native American genocide and fire suppression that has really changed how the forests function. So a lot of our forests are very dense, very unhealthy, and very overstocked with flammable fuels that mean that fire behavior here has changed really drastically, as it has across California with a combination of mismanagement and climate change and droughts. So we have a big fuel situation that the RCD and many partner organizations are working to deal with. So our work includes a range of forestry treatments. That includes mastication, which is fuels reduction treatment using heavy machinery. It includes manual fuels reduction treatments. So we have a chainsaw crew of 16 on staff doing all of that work for us, really hard work out there every day. And it also includes some assistance to the U.S. Forest Service. That was a lot of my work this year. And then we're also, as more of a local agency, really well positioned to perform outreach in the community. So we work to spread awareness of the importance of defensible space and forestry work. And we act as stewards of the Weaverville Community Forest, which is the area of forest directly surrounding the community of Weaverville. And that's a really vital area for both kind of recreation, it's our backyard nature, but also for wildfire safety of the town. So my work, like many fellows, is kind of all over the place. So this is more of an overview presentation instead of really project specific. But I got to work on forestry and fuels reduction from like the very planning stages through implementation and post-implementation monitoring, which is amazing, and also on some education and outreach. So I'll start with fuels reduction project planning. Due to the size of Trinity County and the remoteness and really huge size of many of our project areas, one thing that's very difficult for our CD staff to do is to have the funding and the time to go out and map these areas and think about what treatments we might want to prioritize, to see if the roads are drivable, to see what the fuel conditions really are out there. And specifically as a grant funded organization, that's something that's very difficult to find funding for. So that was kind of where I started this year, was spending a couple of months walking hundreds of acres of units out in the woods, some of them really remote like this one. You can see this has a view up into the Trinity Alps wilderness and is out in just miles of timberland, to start to prepare for fuels treatments that we'll be doing in the coming few years. And then towards the end of my term, I started to dip my toes into preparing contracts to get treatment implementation happening out on some of these units. And that's something that I'll be continuing to work on going forwards, using that planning and mapping that we did on the front end. Another thing I got to participate in this year is some prescribed burning focused training and implementation opportunities. This was really exciting to me. I think prescribed burning is a really important part of the future of this work, really returning to a more natural ecosystem process. So I was really excited to do this, and it is the end goal of most of our projects, that we're returning the forest to a condition where we can use prescribed burning as a maintenance tool. So over time, transitioning to more and more really safe planned burns to keep our forests resilient. So I also got to be trained as a firefighter type 2, the basic wildland fire training this year, and then to assist with some pile and broadcast burns on public land. And this is something I really want to learn more about, making burn plans and the air quality aspects. As you can see, the photo in the background here is from maybe a questionable burn day where we're seeing a lot of smoke sitting in the valley. So that's a really intense part of this work, and something that we need to continue to think about. Another thing that I learned so much about this year is environmental compliance for forestry and fuels reduction. Coming in with a environmental policy degree, I think I knew a lot about the background of like the legislation that requires environmental compliance work. And this is really important. It stops us from just willy-nilly implementing things that have negative impacts, but it's also a huge barrier I learned this year to just getting things done quickly. It requires a lot of planning, a lot of work on the front end, especially for kind of bigger projects. So I learned how to prepare CEQA notices of exemption, which is for smaller impact projects. Did a lot of those this year, and then assisted with a lot of environmental compliance surveys for bigger projects. So that included some field experiences out surveying northern spotted owl, going out at night in the truck and hooting for owls and listening. Some botany surveys, hunting for rare plants and learning to key out a lot of the native plants in this area, and some archaeology surveys, going out and looking for stone tools, covered many acres of project areas, looking for tools and other cool archaeological sites. So some very cool field experiences, but extremely time consuming, lots of work under different experts, and yeah, lots of learning for me. Another big part of my work was direct assistance to the U.S. Forest Service. This is something that we're kind of trying to scale up as an office because, as I mentioned, the Forest Service here really needs a lot of support, and they are managing a lot of our county's land that we want to be safe and healthy for all of the residents of the county. So one of the kind of problems in their management is they historically have a lot of tree plantations that were planted really densely which we now know is unhealthy. It causes too much competition, and it can also cause some pretty bad fire behavior, a high risk of crown fire, which is sometimes the most intense fire. So they have this big backlog of plantations that need to be thinned down to a healthier stand density. And I helped with some of that work by going out and flagging units, laying them out, preparing them for contractors to come in, and then inspecting contractor work after thinning, which is going out and doing kind of monitoring plots on thinned units. And then another important part of that work, the Forest Service also goes out and replants after some of the really severe fires that we've had here in the past few years. So going out onto the August complex, which is that huge 1 million acre fire down in the southern county, and overseeing reforestation and making sure that's done properly, which I have a tiny baby tree here. It was really wonderful to be out there seeing trees go in the ground in these burn zones, and exciting to see our forest recovering. And then finally, as I said, an important part of our work is outreach. So I've gotten to do various kind of education and outreach activities this year. I'm currently working at the RCD's Environmental Education Summer Camp. So I spent my day with 10 to 12-year-olds today, building shelters in the forest and playing around and doing some basic environmental education lessons. And a favorite for me, because I really like working with older kids, was I got to help out with a series of high school field trips this year. These were on the Weaverville Community Forest, that kind of nearby nature to the town of Weaverville. And we had funding through that project to bring in a number of outside educators. So we brought in some tribal educators as pictured here. And we also brought in foresters and other people to share about their green jobs. So that felt like a really powerful opportunity to get high school students not only more connected with the nature that they live near, but also with the opportunities for work in this field, in this area, because the workforce here, workforce development is something that's very, very important. And then I also got to participate in some community meetings and 2 different committees that the RCD helps manage, the Weaverville Community Forest Steering Committee and the Trinity County Fire Safe Council, both of which are engaging the community in our really important work and bringing agencies and community members together to talk about solutions. So super important, exciting work, and it's cool to be doing the implementation, but also seeing how it affects the community and sharing with the community. Hard to boil all of that down into kind of concise takeaways, but some of my more kind of touchy-feely takeaways from this year. This is very obvious, but keeping forests healthy in the face of climate change really is so much hard work. And I think the thing that I learned the most about this year, I kind of understood like how GIS professionals and biologists might be working on this, foresters, but a little bit less what it looks like really to implement a lot of the forestry work. And that's something that I now understand much more, just how much hard work it is for our crews and many contractors that we work with and the Forest Service works with, to be out there every day doing chainsaw work in hot conditions and cold conditions, just like really hard physical work. So it really takes a village to get that work done, and it's so important that we continue to prioritize that workforce if we want to be successful in forest resilience. Another thing that I've definitely been grappling with coming out of college is just the flaws in our current legal and financial frameworks. Many of them exist for great historical reasons and are very important still, but I think it's also exciting as a young professional to be thinking about how things can be improved over the course of my career and lifetime. And finally, I think the threat of wildfire is so present here, and it really unifies us to do very good work. I feel like when I have conversations in this community about my work, I just meet so much support and knowledge and awareness of this issue, and just people really care about it. And I think we're actually able to get a lot more work done in a more unified way, even in a divided political climate, because we all care about fire. So that wraps up my presentation. I'm also happy to say I'll be staying on here at the Trinity County RCD when I finish my GrizzlyCorps term as a Forest Health Program Coordinator. And I do want to say thank you, as everyone has said today, to the great team at GrizzlyCorps for all of the support through the year, and to my wonderful team here at the RCD. I've learned a lot from all of you, and I really appreciate all of your support. So with that, I can take questions. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Bethany. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to speak. You're welcome to ask questions or just give Bethany congrats, or you're welcome to put any questions you have in the chat.